Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sirenitas. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. Adam Kirchen is on assignment tonight. And before we get started here, I do want to remind you that if you are in the market to sell your current home and purchase your next home, or purchase your first home, or if you're looking to refinance, then you need to give our good friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. With over 27 years of experience, he has the knowledge and the know-how to help you get into the right program for you and your family. So again, if you're looking to purchase your next home, refinance, or purchase your first home, give him a call at 781-254-2846 or email him at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. And we do want to extend our congratulations to Coach Devine and the Situate Sailors for advancing to the Super Bowl, where they will play rival Duxbury next Thursday at 3 p.m. Again, we want to congratulate Coach Devine and the Sailors on a terrific season and wishing them all the best as they take on Duxbury in the Super Bowl. And Kevin, just like we do every week, of course, we're going to start at the Patriots here. You know, when I look at that game yesterday and I wrote my 7 points and I'm finishing up a story on Mayo and the team, I can't help but think that might have been their worst performance of the year. Even worse than San Francisco, even worse than that first Jets game. It just felt like they were never in that game. They fell behind 31 to nothing. They ended up losing 34-15, but the game was never in doubt. It was never that close. Would you agree that might have been their worst performance of the season?
Yeah, I don't think there's any might about it. They no-showed, flat out no-show. Now, look, you can blame the history of Miami, and I wrote this yesterday. That's more about than the history of Miami. That's just flat out not showing up for a game, and not being prepared, not being disciplined, not being well coached. I think you and I both agree. Gerard Mayo is going to get a second year. People can say he's not, or that he shouldn't. It's debatable still, I would say, but I don't think there's a question. He's coming back for a second season, so I think people need to forget about that. The Crafts aren't going to admit failure this quickly. Now, the rest of the staff, I think you're going to see some changes. But on the other hand, I think Alex Van Pelt has been better, and he deserves credit for what Drake May is right now. Now, you've been on this for a few weeks, if not a couple months already. Well, he hasn't been starting for a couple months, but Drake May's turnovers. That fumble yesterday, just so careless with the ball, not handling it right. That was the first time yesterday. And again, you've been on it for a while. I wasn't worried about it yet until that one. I know he's a rookie, but hold the ball, man. Just tuck it. So that was frustrating. The defense is frustrating. You might be getting a piece back with Jabril Peppers. I'm sure we'll get to it, but yeah, embarrassing. And is it worthy of coaching, moves in call it a month or so? Probably. I just don't think you're going to see any. So hopefully there's a better effort against Indianapolis, but it's annoying that, it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Yeah, and it's hard to believe that, counting the bye, there's only 6 weeks left in the season. They only have 5 games left. It's crazy to think that the season is almost over. And I think within those 5 games, you got to see meaningful progress. I talked about this yesterday with John Lyons on the postgame show, where you need to see this team make incremental improvements the rest of the way. Now, I think Patriot fans need to be prepared for this team possibly not winning again the rest of the season. Their easiest game left on their schedule is this week, the Colts. After that, you have the bye. You come out of the bye, you go to Arizona, who lost yesterday, but still at 6-5, is in divisional and playoff contention. Then you got to play Buffalo twice, and you sandwich those 2 games with a game against the Chargers, who should be in playoff contention when you play them. So it's conceivable that this team either goes 3-14, replicates last season and goes 4-13, or at best they're 5-12. And that's what I predicted at the beginning of the year. But when you look at the remainder of their schedule, Kevin, I don't see where you win 2 more games. I just don't. I guess you could say their next 2 are probably the most winnable games. But if they lose Sunday, it's almost a fait accompli that they at best finish 4-13, likely 3-14. And look, I'm not surprised by any of this. I've said this since he got hired. They're going to punt on this year. This was not a year for them to contend. The goal this year was to get the franchise quarterback in the draft and develop them, and develop it. And I think they've done that. They've developed, man. Now, I do think you bring up a good point. The turnovers are a problem, and they've been a problem since he started. And he needs to do a better job of taking care of the football, both in terms of throwing the football and avoiding interceptions, but more importantly, not fumbling the football in the pocket, which has been a problem for him. If there's one flaw in his game right now, he can't take care of the ball. And ball security is job security. And if he can't take care of the ball, if he doesn't learn how to take care of it, it's going to be an issue for him potentially moving forward in his career. But this season, in my opinion, is playing out the way I thought it would. They're not very good. The roster's not even average. I wouldn't even call it that. You got a rookie head coach who looks every bit a rookie head coach, by the way. You've got a staff that has holes in it. You've got some experience on offense, not enough on defense. This whole thing is playing out the way I thought it would.
Yeah, it's a mess. And look, I was willing to give this staff a chance really all season long, but when this team is making countless, dumb penalties and mistakes and hurting itself, at some point you start looking at the staff and saying, okay, well, this isn't working. And I think it might be, I might have taken longer than some to get there, but some things are going to need to change. I don't know what they are. And I do still think that you do still have the 5 games to let these guys sort of figure something out. And it's probably not going to result in wins, but to your point, it needs to look better. Like, these guys can't keep making the same pre-snap penalties and the same
10 for 75 yesterday.
Yeah.
And to your point about what needs to look better, it starts there, Kevin. They've got to be more disciplined. 10 penalties for 75 yards. I think they're middle of the pack in penalties, but it sure as shit doesn't feel that way. That drives me up a wall. I mean, with your first 2 offensive possessions yesterday, your starting left tackle has 3 penalties. I mean, you can't win that way. You just can't. And when you're a bad football team and you do stuff like that, that just compounds the misery. That just makes things even worse, and it makes it even harder for you to have any level of success. And that's the frustrating part. That stuff is a reflection of the head coach and the staff clearly not getting enough out of them at practice, clearly not preaching, playing, and being disciplined, and clearly not holding the players accountable when they're not disciplined, because if they were holding them accountable, this wouldn't be happening.
So what do you think of them not being in pads last week? That's all. I think it was a problem too, but
I don't think so, because in my opinion, maybe I wouldn't go the whole week without being in pads, but it's a pretty common practice by the time you get to Thanksgiving in the NFL. Yeah, it's pretty common. A lot of teams don't go full pads. They might go 1 day a week, and the rest of the week they're in either uppers or just sweats. But I think, to me, again, I don't think going in pads and banging and being physical is going to change that much for this football team. Could it help them maybe be a better tackling team defensively? Sure. Could it make them a little bit better at getting on blocks and sustaining them? Sure. But I think at the end of the day, this team's problems go beyond physicality. They're just an undisciplined football team that has gaps, that doesn't have the talent to close those gaps. And again, you have a coach in Mayo who at times looks lost. He's still, and he shouldn't, 12 weeks into the season, he still shouldn't look lost, but he does at times. And he's got to be better. The staff has to be better. And they've got to demand more and get more out of this football team, because what they're getting out of them right now, it's kind of scary to think that, they've settled into being a losing franchise now. If you're going to run it back with him next year, he's got to prove to you pretty early on that he can get a lot more out of this football team than he's getting out of them now.
It's funny you say that. So walking out of the locker room, I want to say Wednesday or Thursday of last week, I looked at our good friends Taylor Carls and Brian Hines, and music was blasting. Guys were, kind of joking around. And look, it's middle of the week, but I looked at them and I said, this doesn't feel like a 3-8 team. And now you get the reports yesterday of guys, sort of being apathetic to losing. Look, I know the professionals. I know it's November. I know they have families, but And I don't want to blow that out of proportion, but it's a problem. And I felt like it's a problem for a month or so now, where, and you've been on this, when we talk about tanking or not, losing sort of has become what they are, and they're getting used to losing. That's the biggest problem, I think, with this coaching staff, because it's not great. And again, during the middle of the week, I get it. It's probably not that big a deal, but I felt that way on Wednesday last week. And then you get the reports yesterday. That's the biggest thing now. You still have trips to Buffalo. You still have a trip to Arizona, like you mentioned. You're going to get some cold weather games here when it's miserable. Like, when do guys start really checking out if they aren't already? So, as ugly as yesterday was, it actually could get uglier, and that's a problem.
Well, I think you saw the first sign of them checking out yesterday. I mean, once they fell behind in that game, it was over. Warm up the buses, pack the bins. It's time to go. And you saw it yesterday. Once they fell behind, there was no sense of urgency there to come back. So have they quit on him? I'm not sure I'll go that far, but
Right?
are
Yeah.
they starting to quit on him? Yes, I absolutely think they are. It's human nature, Kevin. I don't care what sport you play. If things aren't going your way, it's human nature to start to become disinterested, to care less. It doesn't matter that you're getting paid millions of dollars. It's human nature that you lose interest. You're not as motivated. You don't want to be there. And ultimately, you're counting down the days until the season is over. And I think that that's kind of where they're at. I think that their bye screwed them in a sense. They're a team that probably could have used a bye earlier. Instead, they have one of the final buys. And yes, you hope that recharges the batteries and they come back more motivated and healthier and ready to play. But the reality is, even if they come back, quote, fresher, they still have a really tough schedule, and it's going to be a schedule that I don't think allows them to ultimately be competitive. I mean, let's be realistic. You're 3-9. You're probably going to get swept by Buffalo. Chargers have plenty to play for. They're going to be well coached, better coached than they were last year when they came here and won 6-0. Again, I think these next two games are probably their best shot at winning a game the rest of the year. If not, they're going to be picking in the top three again. And we're going to start that conversation that you hate a lot earlier than we want to. Draft talk, that's coming now. I mean, I think once we come out of the break, it's going to be more about, all right, how do you address some of the deficiencies on this football team? As I mentioned earlier, of course, the Indianapolis Colts come to town on Sunday. Indianapolis is currently 5-7. They are still in playoff contention, but it's starting to slip away from them rather. Tough loss yesterday to the Detroit Lions, who are arguably the best team in the league, 24-6. They went back to Anthony Richardson last week. He's played okay. Look, on paper, this Indianapolis team, not great. Could potentially be a winnable game for the Patriots. What do you think they need to do to win this game and get their season back on track?
Well, don't turn the ball over, first of all. I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
that would help.
you can literally say that every single week. But look, it's 2 weeks ago. I said this in Arizona were almost locks. And again, I should have known better with a 3-win team. But you're at home. You can, again, turning the ball over is number one for me. But just in general, just look better. Like, I know it sounds so simple, but just do the simple stuff better. It's not. Drake Mason at post game yesterday. He said it wasn't anything about Miami. We can debate that. It was something to do with Miami, but it's mostly self-inflicted wounds. Like, I think we saw like that touchdown throw on the run. He can make those kind of plays. We knew he could, and he's going to keep you in every single game if you let him. But defensively, you have to be better. You have to tackle. This team has had a problem with containing quarterbacks. Richardson, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, he's not a runner, but can run if he wants to. Contain him. Michael Pittman's probably their best receiver. I would hope you learn your lesson and you have Gonzalez on him. But can they win the game? Yeah. It's going to be, I think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be, kind of ugly. Not 6-0 ugly, but, 13-10-ish. I think we're going down that route just because you don't know which Patriots team is now showing up week to week, which is probably the most frustrating part.
Yeah, Richardson is definitely a dual threat. He can impact the game as a runner. But I think that a lot of the issues you've had all season long are still going to be issues. Defensively, a lack of communication, poor tackling, poor run fits, bad pursuit angles. They haven't fixed any of that. This is what frustrates me and why I come back to coaching and I keep pointing the finger at coaching, because that's where you should see the difference with this football team. We're far enough along into the season now that the fundamentals should be better, and they're not. They're still piss poor. Offensive line, awful yesterday. Trey Jacobs got abused by Chop Robinson. And then, of course, you had Vidarian Lowe, who was a walking penalty yesterday. They ended up benching Jacobs for City. So the offensive line is back to a mess. Let's stop telling ourselves that they're getting better because there's continuity and they're playing multiple weeks. It doesn't matter anymore. Don't piss in my ear and tell me it's raining. They're not getting better. It's still an issue. John Lyons pointed this out yesterday on X, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. I have said that all season, Kevin. Forget about wide receiver. I don't want to hear about Tetratoa McMillan. I don't want to hear about Travis Hunter. I don't want to hear about Luther Burden. You need to address the offensive line. And if you can address the offensive line with a top 10 pick, do it. End of story. Because as much as we thought a couple weeks ago that maybe Vidarian Lowe can be their left tackle of the future, I'm beginning to think that that ship is starting to sail. You still need to address that position. So, you know, for me, when I look at this football team, yeah, could they win on Sunday? Sure, the Colts are a mediocre football team. They're better than the Patriots in some spots, but at the end of the day, inconsistent quarterback play. Jonathan Taylor's been a disappointment. Trust me, I know I am on one of my fantasy teams. They still really don't have that playmaker on the outside. Pittman can be that every now and then. Downs can be that every now and then for them, but they don't really have that playmaker or wide receiver. This is a winnable game for the Patriots. But with this Patriots team being so undisciplined, unable to pass protect, unable to get stops on defense, I think the Colts come in here and win. I think the Colts come in here and win and send the Patriots off into their bye at 3-10. Because at the end of the day, the Patriots are not equipped to win close games. I'm with you. I think this will be a close game. But why pick them right now? A couple of weeks ago, I might have picked them, but they've reverted back to the same BS that we saw earlier this season. So you know what? Not picking them. You're playing out the string. You're, in essence, going to have a top 3 pick again. It's lock, stock, and barrel, in my opinion. I just don't see how they win this game. They did nothing yesterday to show me, despite playing better at home of late, that they can bounce back and win. I don't see it. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show, presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Saranitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. Adam Kirchen is on assignment tonight. I think he's on another planet. I don't know where he went, but he's not here. That much I can tell you. Now, before we pick up the conversation and talk some college football, I do want to remind you that if you're in the market to sell your current home and purchase your next home, purchase your first home, or refinance your current living situation, well, then Herb Devine is your guy. Give him a call at 781-254-2846. You can also email him at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. And yes, Coach Devine will be a little busy here in the next couple of weeks, but he'll still make time for you. So give him a call if you got any real estate questions. I can't recommend him enough. I've been in the real estate business for 10 years. I've worked with a lot of loan officers, a lot of lenders, and I can tell you this, Herb is as good as it gets. He is one of the best in the business. He gets people, especially people that are in the education and sports fields. So again, if you are in the real estate market for any reason, or you're looking to refinance, give Herb a call or shoot him an email. We do have a comment that has come in, so we're going to take a look at what we got here. Sam Knox, our guy Sam Knox, the man. The man, he's a legend. My guy, it's always great stuff. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate you, brother. Great hearing from you as always, my man. Happy Thanksgiving. Let's pivot here and talk some college football. And I want to start with URI. What a story there. And really, what a weekend for Division I college football in New England. Of course, 3 teams make the FCS playoffs. URI, UNH gets an at-large bid. They're going to host UT Martin on Saturday in Durham. And Central Connecticut State University, who beat Duquesne on Saturday to win the NEC, they are going to play URI in the first round, who clinched the share of the CAA. First 10-win season, first conference title in 39 years. I was there for that. It was an awesome atmosphere. It was great to see Coach Fleming and the guys celebrate after the game. There was a brief skirmish after the game, but that's not going to take away from the celebration. But what a season for the Rams, Kevin. They finished 10-2. They get a home playoff game. They win a share of the CAA. Truly a historic season for a football program that for a long time has had a hard time finding traction. Well, they got the right guy in Fleming 10 years ago. He's got the program now going in a direction where they can do this every single year if they build off of this year. But a memorable, memorable season for the Rams.
Yeah, it's awesome. He talked this morning. One of only 4 coaches left in the CAA who was on their weekly call today. First of all, that CAA conference, like we've said, from the jump, is probably the 3rd best conference in all of FCS. Just so hard each and every week. So to come out on top, with a league championship is that much more impressive. He talked this morning. Look, he said point blank, it's huge for the community, it's huge for the school, huge for the alumni. And he said the most impressive thing is the groundswell of people that have sort of come up and just supported this program throughout the year. And you can speak to it over the years. It's taken a while to get to this point. They've sort of had to build it up, as you'd expect, with a small town, if you will, sort of program down in Kingston. But it's awesome. And I'd expect them, honestly, to make a run here. A win or two, I don't think should be out of the question. Now, they got a tough draw with CCSU, who's arguably one of the hardest teams in the country right now. But URI has every piece to make a run at quarterback, receiver, running back, one of the best defensive players in the entire country in Pena. So yes, it's a nice story, but I think they have intentions on making it more than just a nice story. I'd expect them, again, to go on a little run here too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. You bring up a good point about this being a tough matchup against Central Connecticut State. Coach Lechtenberg has done a great job there turning that program around. They win the NEC, and I've said this all season about the Blue Devils. Their schedule helped them. When they needed to play big in big games, they were battle-tested, and they were able to do that. And I say it all the time. I don't care what the level of football is. If you play a tough schedule, it will pay dividends at some point, whether it be at the end of the season you played that schedule or down the road as you build the program. And it certainly helped CCSU. I mean, you play Central Michigan, you play UMass, you play Yale, you play Dartmouth. That schedule set up the Blue Devils to have success. And then, of course, Brady Olson transfers in from UMass. He solidifies a quarterback position, which had been a problem for them. Elijah Howard, workhorse tailback who could take a game over. You're darn right that they could potentially pose some problems for this URI defense. Now, this URI defense is fast, they're physical, and they can get after you. If they can get CCSU into some long down situations, they should be in pretty good shape if they can unleash that pass rush. But if CCSU can establish that running game with Howard and control the line of scrimmage, they're going to be in this game, and I fully expect them to be in this game. URI doesn't blow people out. And the reason I say that is they're old school. They want to run the football, play action pass, perimeter screens, RPOs, and then they're going to lean on their defense. And that formula is a formula that works this time of year. You can win in advance on that formula. But I don't expect this to be a blowout. I would be surprised. I think CCSU can play with them. But it's great for both programs. And as I mentioned, it's great for New England college football as well. Of course, UNH also gets a playoff bid, or a playoff berth, rather, finishing 8-4. They're going to host UT Martin on Saturday. Great finish for Ricky Santos' squad. They wrap up the season with a big win over Maine to retain the Bryce Cowell Musket. They win 3 in a row to finish the season. They end up getting this at-large playoff berth. And you know what? It's UNH, man. We've seen this from them before. They can win this game and potentially make a run here.
Yeah, just to go back real quick, there's a little backstory between CCSU and URI as well. I asked Jim Fleming today, how well he knew the program. He was at Sacred Heart in 2000 and 2001, which, by the way, I didn't know until today. He went 21-1 at Sacred Heart. So he is a legend in his own right. But he actually interviewed for the CCSU job and kind of got to know the program years ago. So just a neat little backstory heading into that one. But as far as UNH, Ricky Santos talked again today as well. And I asked him, it's so much turnover, especially in college. every single year, especially now. How do you sustain it's 16 playoff appearances in 20 years. That's outrageous in this day and age, for college football. And his first thought was Coach McDonald. He gave credit to Sean McDonald and sort of what he built, and then just sort of passed on credit to assistants and stuff like that. But he needs more credit as one of the ultimate, good guys and good coaches in the country, really. Again, 16 playoff appearances in 20 years to go from two coaches and that's it. That's a hell of a run for UNH and just sort of speaks to the bar that's been set there. Like they would have been disappointed if they didn't get in, even though they won 8 games. Like that's just how it is at UNH. So I expect them to beat UT Martin this weekend. Although I did ask Santos, how hard it is to prepare for a team from a conference you really or know little about. And he said it's really about us. And this time of year, I feel like for a lot of teams, yes, it's the opponent, it's the unknown. But if you're going to have success in the postseason, it's about you more than anything else. And I feel like that's very, very true for UNH, maybe even more so than other teams. So, and you talk about the schedule that CCSU played. UNH was no easier. I mean, they opened with UCF, had Holy Cross, I believe they played Yale, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Harvard.
Yeah. So, they are extremely battle
They
tested.
played Harvard. They played Holy Cross. They played Central Florida.
Yep. Yeah. So they're very battle tested too.
Yeah, they are. You talk about Coach McDonald and his tenure there, and of course they had a ton of success under Sean McDonald, and then of course Coach Bowes before that. I mean, this is a program, like I said, that has had playoff success, and they're a program that has proven in the past that if they get in, they can make some noise and go on a potential run here. And UNH is certainly set up to do that. I mean, you have an explosive offense with Seth Morgan, Logan Tomlinson. They finally started to find their running game again. Defense has been playing pretty well of late. Don't sleep on the Wildcats. They've been there, done that. They can get there again, and make another playoff run.
Yeah, no, sorry to interrupt. They did get a tough draw. If they win, they have the top seed, Montana State, who is 12-0, and
they got to go out there.
Yeah, it's pretty much all they know out Montana. So that'll be tough. And just going back to the other game, whoever wins that game will travel to Mercer the week after. So if there was a team, out of the three local ones that has a chance at a run, it's probably better for URI or CCSU getting Mercer. But I wouldn't I wouldn't, if I could speak, put it past UNH to go out to Montana State and give them a game as well.
Oh yeah, no, I can see that. I can totally see that. Maine went out there and did that. So, yeah, I can totally see them going out there and giving them a game. Absolutely. Just going around the region again, congratulations to those three programs. Harvard loses the game again, 34-29 to Yale. First of all, Yale finishes 7-3. They don't get a piece of the pie, but another strong season for Tony Reno's squad.
This maybe more than anything is the reason why the Ivy Leagues need to play in the postseason. Because Yale got so hot at the end of the year. I think they won their last 5, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 6. But they got hot. Harvard would have, made a run. Dartmouth considered the Ivy League as well. These teams need to play in the postseason and have a real shot to continue their season A and B, compete for national championship. Any one of these teams should be in the bracket. Harvard finished, I believe, 25th today in the coaches poll, the AFCA coaches poll. So we're not going to go down that road, but I think this weekend, maybe more than any, just sort of proved how much the Ivy League needs to be in the FCS postseason.
And of course, it's an unfortunate loss for Harvard because had they won, they would have won the Ivy League outright. They would have been
first time in a decade.
Right. They would have been champs all by their lonesome. Instead, they have to share it with Dartmouth, who blew out Brown, and they also have to share with Columbia, who beat Cornell. So certainly a bittersweet defeat for Harvard because everything was set up for them. All they needed to do, and it's a big ask beating Yale in this rivalry game, but all they needed to do was beat Yale, and they were conference champs, and unfortunately, they fell short of that. Our good friend Alex Agrella checks in. Reno to Rice. Yeah, Reno to Rice. I mean, it's probably about a 6-hour drive, 6.5-hour drive. No, I'm kidding. He's saying Coach Reno possibly taking over the Rice Owls. Yeah, I mean, he fits the profile. Rice is an academic school. So I'd hate
I
to lose him because we love Tony Reno in New England Football Journal. He's a gentleman of class act and he's been a supporter of ours. But you know what? If I'm the Rice Owls, if I'm Rice University, yeah, I talk to Tony Reno. Why
yeah,
not?
yeah, you make a call, but don't sleep on UMass for Reno as well.
Yeah, his name's been mentioned. I didn't put him on my list just because I felt that if it came down to that, he'd probably stay at Yale. But his name crossed my mind. I deliberated it internally quite a bit, trying to figure out if I wanted to add him to my list of potential UMass candidates last week. So, but I agree with you. He's going to be in the mix, of course. As you reported last week, Dan Curran has announced he's staying at Holy Cross. Holy Cross won on Saturday. They also got a piece of the Patriot League title, so they have that. They're sixth. If you view it as their Patriot League title, it would be their sixth in a row that they've
So
either won it outright or gotten a piece of it.
real quick, how do you feel about that? Because I was thinking about this because UNH, sorry, not UNH, URI, they got the trophy, they celebrated as well. They're going to the postseason, but if you're Holy Cross, look, we love Dan Curran. I love Dan Curran. He's been great to me, and I was very happy to see him get a piece of that trophy because he didn't against Merrimack. But how do you feel about teams sort of taking that celebration? It's
I
50-50 for me.
Yeah, it's hard for me too because I mean you didn't win it outright, right? So
And then they lost to Lehigh, the team that
right,
ultimately went to the playoffs.
right. So by that logic, it's very easy to say, well, you lost to the team that you shared it with. Technically, they're the team that won it, but I mean, you can claim a piece of it because of the structure of your conference and the system. So they ultimately finished with a similar record in conference, and I think that ultimately proves to be the difference. But yeah, it's interesting because even the other night after the URI Bryant game, I thought to myself, well, should they be celebrating this much? They didn't win it outright, but then there's a part of me that's like, the hell with that. You're damn right they should be
Right, you
celebrating.
work your asses off.
It hasn't happened in 39 years. And not only that, they won 10 games and they're going to go to the FCS playoffs. So yeah, celebrate, smoke cigars on the field, violate all kinds of school rules on campus. Like at the end of the day, you know, they want a piece of it. I think the thing that's tricky for me is should it be that you were co-champ? Should it be announced as
Yeah.
co-CAA or co-Patriot League champion? It shouldn't be we're the champions. We won the conference. Like it's if you didn't win it outright, I'm not sure I'd go around saying that, but I don't make up the rules when it comes to these things, Stone.
No, I hear. I was just curious because again, I went back and forth when I saw the celebrations. excuse me, on Saturday. Again, huge congratulations to Dan Curran. That Holy Cross schedule. You want to talk about a team that played a hard schedule? They might have played one of the hardest in all of New England. So don't get me wrong. We're not taking any credit away from them. Just something doesn't sit right with me about the co-championship celebration. That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think it's a little iffy for me as well. But again, I don't want to be a hypocrite either because I enjoyed seeing URI
Mhm.
celebrate that on Saturday after the game. I think that
Sure.
it was a special moment for the program and certainly again a historic season for the Rams. They deserve to celebrate it. You were at Boston College on Saturday. Didn't see that one coming. I'm not surprised that they won. I didn't see them being as dominant as they were in a 41-21 win over North Carolina.
No, for the first time I've been covering them for 5 years now, 6 years. The first time I covered a game there where it was over at halftime. And you can kind of feel it too. I think it was, let's say 24-0 at the half, if I remember right. Just look at the numbers. They had 422 yards of offense. UNC had 212, but most of that was garbage time in the fourth quarter. Held the ball for 37 minutes. Grayson James, once again, just he gives you something this offense did not have. If you watch the touchdown throw to Reed Harris, it's a dime in the back right corner that he's able to high point. Tommy can't make that throw. He simply can't. So I think you're seeing how much better this offense could have been with Grayson James all season long. But look, it's a massive win. It's now stress free on Saturday against Pitt. 7 wins is great now. It's ideal. It gets you a better bowl, but you're not playing for the embarrassment of possibly not making a bowl and maybe even going 5-7. So they're 6-5. It is what it is. And ideally, I know you and I feel the same way. We'd like to see them in the Pinstripe Bowl. I know they're hoping for a warm weather destination, but it's good. They're in a bowl. You avoid disaster. I think you're learning about Grayson James and that the fact that you might already have a quarterback. I do think they still go in the portal, but you might have your QB1 heading into next year, which would be huge just in terms of being able to go into the offseason, A, confident, and B, with continuity already instead of bringing a kid in and having him learn on the fly. So this pick game now isn't as big, but if you get to 7-5, I think you're in a pretty respectable bowl compared to the Fenway Bowl last year. But I think most
What
importantly,
is your problem with the Wasabi Fenway Bowl?
it's not just that bowl. It's that tier of bowls that bothers me.
Well, that's where they are. Even if they win
Yeah,
on Saturday,
I know.
they're not getting they're not going to the Pinstripe Bowl.
No,
That's not
probably
going to
not.
happen. I'd be shocked if they took a 7-5 team.
So from what I've seen and heard, Boca Raton is the hope for the, I forget which bowl.
The Boca Raton Bowl.
Is it that what it is now? I couldn't remember.
Yes.
But
They should what they should do in honor of you is they should start a bowl in honor of you and put BC in it because you cover them.
I mean,
The Kevin Stone Bowl.
He said you wouldn't have to tempt me twice. I'm down for a good time. But no, look, it's
The
the
Kevin
win,
is stoned bowl.
the win the other day was big for a lot of reasons. It was their first 60-minute game. We've talked about finishing all year long for them. Once again, they ran the ball. You didn't have Jaden Skeet. I'm not sure if you're going to the rest of the year. You're still banged
By
up.
the way, not to cut you off, Ken checks in. Thanks for checking in, Ken. I understand BC is bowl eligible. How confident are you guys that they reach a decent bowl game, and who could be the opponent? Thanks for checking in, Ken. Ken understands that they're bowl eligible. Breaking news to Ken.
The last projection I saw was them versus Oklahoma. Talk about two ends of the spectrum. Oklahoma would be pissed. BC would be thrilled. So who knows? I think it's way too early.
If I were Oklahoma, I would not be pissed.
No, but so look, the win in general the other day, it's big for them, just in terms of the growth and sort of moving forward in the right direction. Because it could have gotten really ugly down the stretch here after everything that happened. But Grayson's handled himself very well. The team has responded to him phenomenally. I think you can see that they've rallied around him and sort of believed in him, and that comes from practice, which Bill O'Brien has talked a lot about. A lot of guys have sort of stepped up and impressed in practice, and you're seeing them get more and more chances, like a Jordan McDonald, Isaiah Ferris had a huge punt return the other day. Joe Marinaro had an interception. The entire sideline went over to him, like he just won the Super Bowl, which was awesome. So this team is very much together still after what happened with Tommy. So again, that win is just nice because it makes this weekend now stress-free. You can go out and kind of play loose and hopefully get to 7-5.
Yeah. And I think if you get to 7-5 and they win a bowl game, you get to 8-5. You know what? That's a pretty good season considering
and they gave the job
opened up. Right. Considering the fact that the job opened up late, you had to go out and get O'Brien. That process took a little bit of time. So if they somehow win on Saturday, and Pitt's been on the skids the last few weeks, so it's very possible. If they win on Saturday, like I said, you win a bowl game, 8-win season in year one of the Bill O'Brien experience, sign me up. I'd take it in a heartbeat if I were a Boston College football fan because that's meaningful progress. You can build off of that heading into the offseason. And to your point, I agree. I think they're going to be very active in the portal at the quarterback position. Look, I said it from day one that I felt that ultimately he wasn't going to be able to turn the program around until he got his kind of guy at that position. It's not a knock on Thomas Castellanos, but Castellanos wasn't the scheme fit. Grayson James is more of a scheme fit, but I think you can get an even better scheme fit than him. So the way I see it, you know what? Again, I think, yes, the offense is better, but I think they're going to have to figure out a way moving forward to get a guy that's a pocket passer first that gives you some athleticism that can break, contain, and make some plays outside the pocket. But he's got to be a quarterback that can win from the pocket. Ken checks back in. Depending on BC's season outcome, is it for sure a lock that Bill O'Brien is back in 2025, Or could other schools in the NFL reach out, although he wants to keep his family in Mass? Yeah, I don't see him
Exactly.
going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere. No, I agree. He's not going anywhere. And why would you if you're him? I mean, again, and I'm not sure the NFL is going to come calling.
No,
You
and
know what I mean?
to your point, he wants to get his own guys in here. Let him
Yeah.
have a couple recruiting cycles, and then
Yeah.
then we'll revisit if he wants to leave or not.
Well, but even then, he's in his mid-50s.
Right, that's it.
And you know, you're back home.
Yeah,
You know,
no, I mean,
let's be honest here. When it comes to Bill O'Brien, he could be here as long as he wants to if he's winning 7, 8, 9 games a year.
yeah,
I mean,
but
the expectations are fairly manageable at Boston College. I don't think Father Leahy and the powers that be envision this as a national championship caliber program. That's not to say that they would have a problem if Bill O'Brien built it into that. And with the expanded playoff, you have a shot at that. But as far as I see it, I don't see him going anywhere. I think this is the ideal job for him at this stage in his career.
I was just going to say it's his dream job. And you asked him when we had him on the show, point blank, does he see this as his last stop? And he said, yeah. So now look, could that be coach speak? Sure, but I generally believe it when he says it.
No, I do too. I do too. Now, I don't know if I believe it's his dream job, but I do think it's a job. It's a job that, look, when I was coming up the coaching ranks, a lot of guys wanted that to be the job for them. They viewed it as the job because it's Boston College and the history and the tradition and everything else. Now, again, like I said, it's debatable whether it's the guy's dream job, but it's a job that could be his last job as long as he's having some level of success and he's building a program and he's meeting the school expectation in terms of the players he's bringing into the program and the academic component. I think if he's doing all that and he's managing to have success in this era of NIL and the portal, I think he can be there as long as he wants to be. I think he'll be fine. UMass goes down to Georgia, plays pretty tough, ends up getting blown out, but hat tip to Shane Montgomery and the staff for what was a very difficult week for the UMass football program. Hat tip to those guys who got the players ready. They were able to go down in Georgia, and for a half, they played some competitive football.
Yeah, UConn better be careful. First of all, credit to those kids, too, because they easily could have packed it in. And no one would have batted an eye last week, if they went down there and got absolutely destroyed. Technically speaking, on the scoreboard, they did, but, 31-21 at one point, I believe in the third quarter. So credit to those kids for not packing it in and showing some fight. And I would not be surprised if they gave UConn a battle this weekend, just for the pride of it. Now, you mentioned the hard week. They made it harder on themselves again, somehow, with the senior day fiasco, which is now apparently back on. And we don't need to get too far into it. Just what a disaster that athletic department has been for the last week. But yeah, it's a good effort. It's good to see again those kids not packing it in, and good for Shane Montgomery for having the kids' ears at least. And they could have easily rolled over and didn't. But big spot for UConn. I'm sure we were going to get to it. They lost to Syracuse in really their first road game since September 14th against Duke. But big spot for UConn here coming up. Can't lose this game. You can't have momentum sort of, go by the wayside heading into bowl season. This was supposed to be a special year. You can still win 8 games in the regular season, which would be crazy for them. Second time in 3 years going to a bowl, obviously. But to win 8 games 2 years in would be one hell of a finish. You can't slip up here against the UMass team that, again, is going to play tough now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this is a huge game for UConn. You got to bounce back after that 31-24 loss to Syracuse. 8 wins would be big for the program. You get a better bowl. You go to a better bowl. You win that. Now all of a sudden you win 9 games. That would be big for UConn. And I also agree with you that if you're UConn, be forewarned because this UMass team is going to empty the kitchen sink at you. They're going to throw everything at you on Saturday. It's the season finale for a lot of the guys that plan on being a part of the program next year. They want to make a favorable impression for the new coach and the new staff when they come in. So I think they're going to give you everything they have. And if you're UConn, you know that. Jim Mora knows that when they get up there on Saturday, they're going to get their best shot, and they've got to be ready to play. As far as the senior day fiasco is concerned, shame on UMass. That's all I have to say. I know 54 seniors is a lot, but get creative with the way you want to honor them.
Division I school. Figure it out.
You don't have to do the traditional, name each individual and then have them walk over to their parents. You can figure out a way to do it collectively. But the bottom line is it was a bad PR week for UMass Athletics, for athletic director Ryan Bamford, and for the school. End of the day, look, he made the choice to fire Brown. He's well within his rights to do that. He's the athletic director. He made that decision. Some people agreed with it, some people didn't. But this senior day thing could have been handled a lot better. And you have to know, you have to have a keen eye for this stuff. But you have to know, if you're Bamford in this athletic department, that, all right, we fired Brown. We're going to catch heat for that. But we don't want to bring any more attention onto the program. Let's make sure we handle the rest of this season the right way. And then they announce, in essence, that they're not going to honor the seniors. That leads to a backlash. They then put out a cheap tweet on X on Saturday morning announcing that they will honor them, that it was in essence a miscommunication. There was no miscommunication. You botched it, and now you're trying to save face. So, you know what? Hopefully he gets the hire right, and they hire the right football coach that could lead the program into the MAC moving forward. But certainly not a banner week last week for UMass Athletics. Of course, most of the D1 college football programs wrapped up their season on Saturday. Before we wrap up the college football conversation, I wanted to ask you just your thoughts on the season that was. Of course, it officially wraps up this weekend. Yes, we'll have 3 playoff teams at the FCS level. UConn and BC are bowl eligible, but just some thoughts on the season that was in college football. Did anything surprise you, not surprise you? Just a thought on the season we just had.
First and foremost, it's my favorite thing that we do is cover college on this site. It's 16 programs, but man, it's been great just to kind of to build relationships with all of them and be able to cover them. So first of all, thank you to all the programs that help us make our job easier. In terms of surprises, UConn jumps off the page at me. UConn, CCSU. We knew the Ivy League was going to be as competitive as it always is, and this year was no different. So fun to cover that league as well. I think UConn has to be the biggest surprise, though. No,
I would agree. I think so. I mean, the schedule was set up for them to turn it around, but I would agree that they're probably the biggest surprise. I thought that BC's slide was disappointing because, after they beat Florida State on national television, of course, no one envisioned Florida State being historically bad this season. But after they beat Florida State, after they beat Michigan State on national television, both of those programs ended up struggling. Those 2 wins all of a sudden didn't look as good as we thought. Yeah, they hung tough with Missouri, but ultimately lost. But that was, to me, the most disappointing part of this season because it started off with so much promise. And, I mean, at one point, at the end of September, people were talking about Bill O'Brien building a monster, and by the end of October, you're wondering if they're going to make a bowl game. So that was disappointing to me. But I would agree with you. I think UConn and URI perhaps for me is the biggest surprise because, look, I've said this several times this season. I don't think this was Jim Fleming's most talented team. But for whatever reason, it all came together. He and the staff got the most out of these guys, and they ended up having a historic season.
Yeah, on BC, I thought they were going to win 9 games. And we were talking.
Yeah, but you're always bullish on them.
It's true.
You're always drinking the Kool-Aid every August.
I'm saying after Florida State, though.
In fact, but this year you were overdosing on the Kool-Aid.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had some stake in the Bill O'Brien hire.
You were peeing out Kool-Aid. You were drinking.
Yeah, I mean, I have a stake in the story. That's all. But we need to mention Maine as well. What do you hear from
big turnaround season? I mean, they finished 5-7, which is disappointing from a record standpoint. But where that program has been in recent years, I agree with you, Kevin. I think Maine is also another great story from this season.
Yeah, and then obviously just Dartmouth again. What Samuel McCorkle has done in the 2 years, given the situation that he walked into, so much credit to him and his staff.
Well, and look, Buddy had the program going in that direction. And unfortunately, we lose Buddy. Sammy McCorkle steps in. And look, first of all, you're not going to find too many people in this business that are the quality of human being that Sammy McCorkle is. He's just a great dude. And he steps in. The staff stays intact. They win a share of the Ivy League last year on a late season run. They had a great season this year, 8-2, win a share of the league again. I mean, you can't say enough good things about the job that Sammy has done there. And this staff, his staff is tremendous. They've done a great job there. And I expect Dartmouth to be a player in the Ivy League year in and year out for a long time. But for me, I think URI is the biggest surprise. I would say in terms of coming into the season, what we expected out of them and where they were picked to finish in the preseason CAA polls. The biggest disappointment, as I said, in my opinion, is Boston College after that great start, not being able to carry it over and continue. But they've rebounded. They played some pretty good football here the last 3 weeks. And you know what? I think they're going to win on Saturday. I think they finish 7-5.
Yeah,
I think that they go to a reputable bowl. And I think that they'll be in a pretty good spot to pick up win number 8. Look, BC fans need to chill out with the monster talk. In this day and age with the portal NIL, it's hard to, quote, build a monster. But you don't need to build a monster at Boston College. With the expanded playoff, you can be in the mix every year. Incremental steps. Right now, you want to build a program that can compete for an ACC title. From there, build a program that can compete for a national title. It can be done at Boston College, but it's got to be done the right way. Bill O'Brien is the guy to get it done. I would say also, Kevin, if I were to throw in another disappointment, I would say UMass, because we thought year 3 of the Don Brown regime, this was the year that maybe they get to 4 or 5 wins. They don't quite become bowl eligible, but they get close. Didn't happen. It didn't happen. So,
no, that's an understatement.
Yeah, right. It is an understatement. Real quick before we wrap it up here, do want to just get into high school football. Of course, Thanksgiving is on Thursday. You got all the traditional rivalries. You got games in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Some big games. Of course, you'll be at Wellesley Needham like you are every year, a tradition unlike any other. We're also going to have coverage of the Quincy North Quincy game. We're trying to get someone over to Mansfield and Foxborough. We're going to be at the Fenway Park games tomorrow night. So we're going to be covering a bunch of games. Of course, big one in Connecticut, Darien and Buchanan in Class L there. Some great games. And, of course, the Super Bowl. The Super Bowls were determined this past weekend with the semifinal games and those results. And, of course, the MIA announced today when the games are going to be played. Thoughts on Thanksgiving and that as we wrap it up.
So you and I are in the same boat. I love Thanksgiving. I wish it meant more. I wish the rivalries still were
They've ruined it. You're going to play about 50% of your Thanksgiving games in the next 2 nights. It's ridiculous.
Yep. And I'm now seeing teams moving their games to Wednesday for some rain, which also bothers me, but it is what it is. Look, Thanksgiving doesn't mean what it used to, but it still means something around here. And not only that, I have a father who is a superintendent in a town. I won't name the town, but he's told me this Thanksgiving gate, and we've talked about this, God knows how many times, the Thanksgiving gate will often pay for a lot of high schools, sports seasons, and not just one sport. I'm talking the entire athletic department. So this needs to, I know we're screaming out into the air and it's not going to mean anything, but this needs to mean something again. I don't know how it happens. I don't know when it happens. Thanksgiving needs to matter here. Again, as a Waltham guy, I used to be Brockton. It was one of the biggest things every single year. I believe Waltham plays Arlington now. I don't even know. So that's a problem in itself. You mentioned Needham Wellesley and some of the other rivalries. Those still exist, and those are still awesome games with awesome crowds. But to see just in the matter of, since I graduated high school 20 years ago, how much it's sort of lessened, or the meaning of this day is lessened, is so frustrating. But on to the Super Bowls, I can't wait. It's a great 3 days. I wish it wasn't 3 days. And we can argue about which team.
Don't understand why they're not playing Saturday. I know that people have said it's not the MIA's decision, but it's disappointing to say the least that you're not playing at least 4 of those games on Saturday.
And we can debate on who should be playing when, because I think some teams deserve prime time. And
that and it's you're right. I mean,
and you also have the whole the Wednesday games not being broadcast live, but Thursday and Friday are. So there's a lot to complain about with the MIA, as people do, and I'm sure we'll get into all of that next week when we're at Gillette. But look, the games are the games, and I think every matchup is fantastic. I don't know if you want to get into this now, but just the games.
No, we'll look ahead next week. We got plenty of
the games you were at this past weekend. I was at Needham and Prep, just an incredible atmosphere. Obviously, the pouring rain around the state made life difficult for offenses, and Prep is no different. They couldn't throw the ball. Needham's defense, as you know, is arguably the best in the state. They get after you, they get after it. And that offensive line can bully people. So I would not be surprised to see them take down Zavarian. But just in general, just going back to Gillette, it's a cool experience for the kids, but I think it can be so much better and so much more for this week of Super Bowls. But again, we'll get into that more next week as well.
Yeah, and that's just it. I think you bring up a great point. The matchups are terrific. I mean, you've got some great matchups. Some matchups, too, that you've got matchups that we didn't see coming, but you also have some matchups that we kind of eyeballed at the beginning of the season. We're like, this would be ideal in this division. I think, Division One, we knew Needham was going to be good. We didn't know if they were good enough to get there. So they're there. They're playing Zavarian. D2, I think pretty much everybody and their mother thought you were going to get CMKP. D3, you have an all-Hawks Super Bowl. To me, no one called that. I think
That's
a lot of
Conference
people thought
State.
North, right. I think a lot of people thought North was going to be good, but Mansfield coming into the season wasn't supposed to be as good as they ended up being. D4, I mean, again, we all knew it was going to be Situate and Duxbury. They were loaded coming into the season. D5, Foxborough was amongst the favorites. A lot of people had Foxborough Shawsheen in the bowl. It happened. That's going to be a great game. Same thing in D6. Beginning of the year, I think a lot of people thought Hudson and Fairhaven were probably the two best teams. You're getting them. In D7, you're getting Uxbridge again, looking to defend their title. Gets a Mashpee team that's been there a bunch. And D8 is going to be a hell of a game. That's going to be a slugfest. That's going to be a fist fight in a phone booth between Randolph and West Boylston. It's hard to pick against Mike Ross and West Boylston. But, man, that's going to be a fantastic game. We'll preview all the matchups next week, but good stuff as well. Final thoughts here, Stone, before we wrap it up.
Hard to believe we're winding down, but you want to look at it another way, we'll be doing pro days before you know it. So,
yeah. We've already got transfer portal stuff out there, so we'll be breaking.
And just a quick shout out to our runners this weekend. We covered 24 games in 3 days. For our company, it might not seem like much for a lot of people. We take pride in covering as many games as we can. 24 in 3 days is insane, especially those that brave the elements and did double headers on Saturday. So just a shout out to them. And again, please keep subscribing and supporting us. Otherwise, we cannot do what we keep doing.
Yeah, and I want to send a special shout out to Charlie Adams, who did yeoman's work on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, covering the Rhode Island state title games, starting with the state championship game, and then the Division 1, 2, 3, and 4 state title games on Saturday and Sunday. Great job, my friend. Awesome job by Charlie all season long as our lead Rhode Island guy, and he did a fantastic job. And if you're a fan of Rhode Island high school football, if you're a fan of any of those programs, please make sure you subscribe and check out our coverage, and we'll have more Rhode Island high school football coverage as we go along here. Maine crowned several state champions this weekend. I want to send a special shout out to Coach Green and Portland for their Class A state title win over Thornton Academy. And we're not done with the playoffs. I mean, we got the Super Bowls here next week, and then we've got the CIAC playoffs starting next week as well. We'll be at all 6 of those state title games the second weekend of December. So plenty of high school football to come. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Tiernides. We'll be back with you next week. Until then, happy Thanksgiving. Get out there, enjoy the games, and enjoy the day with your families. It's the best holiday we have. Enjoy it. You have faith, food, family, and football. Can't beat it. It's an awesome day. And I think I threw faith in there. I really only like Thanksgiving for family, food, and football. But whatever. If you're the religious sort, I got you. All right, until next week. Peace.
See ya.